Earlier this month, Russia sent some 20 drones into Poland's airspace. Then it sent a drone into Romania. And for 12 minutes on September 19th, 3 Russian fighter jets lingered over the skies in Estonia before NATO mobilized F-35 jet fighters to repel them. At an emergency UN Security Council meeting this week, Poland's Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Radek Sikorski delivered a sharp rebuke to Russia. I talked to Sikorski on Thursday at Poland's consulate here in New York. Radek Sikorski, welcome on the show. You gave quite a remarkable speech at the UN, and at the end of it, you issued a threat to Russia, I think a veiled threat, but a threat, which was in effect that were there to be another incursion of Russian drones into Polish airspace, you might do more than shoot them down. There was an implication that NATO might take this battle to Russia.
No, that wasn't the implication. But yes, we see Russian actions as a part of the spectrum of their hybrid war, which includes information warfare, arsons, assassinations, sending parcels with incendiary devices, pushing migrants across the Belarusian-Polish border, and now these drones deliberately sent into Poland. And of course, we have the right to defend our airspace, the security of our citizens and their property. And there are procedures for it. You intercept incoming drones or aircraft. You try to send them home, or you try to make them land.
But you said you have been warned. That was your last line. Yes. What were you warning them about?
In the end, every sovereign country has the right to deal with intruders. You wouldn't tolerate Cuban MiGs over Florida, and we will, in the end, protect our citizens.
Do you believe that this is part of a Russian strategy of probing to see whether NATO is actually going to respond if it were to do things in NATO territory?
Yes, we do. This was a deliberate provocation. 21 drones were launched from a single location, different from the launch sites of the drones against Ukraine, and the composition of the drone swarm was different. If it was a sideshow of the attack on Ukraine, you would expect the same proportion of armed and unarmed drones. All these drones were unarmed. Instead of warheads, they had extra fuel tanks. So the Russians were trying to test us without starting the war. Test our air defenses, test the resilience of our population, the unity of our government, and our allies. And I'm glad to say that our Dutch, Italian, German allies were there with us in the fight, which, by the way, lasted 7 hours. And allies have also sent us additional anti-drone and anti-aircraft assets since then.
What do you make of President Trump's seeming reversal of policy on Ukraine? He now says Ukraine can win the war, it can recover its territories. Previously, he and Secretary Hetzek had said there's no way they're going to get these territories back. The Russians will keep them, and that's okay.
I think President Trump is seeing what we are seeing, namely that the Russian offensive has petered out. Russia's size is playing against it because it is impossible for Russia to protect all its assets with anti-aircraft capabilities. So Ukraine has already attacked something like half of Russian refineries, which means that it's more difficult for the war machine to continue to attack Ukraine. And President Trump famously likes backing a winner.
But on the crucial issue of, is he willing to put pressure on Russia, give more arms to Ukraine, put in place more sanctions against Russia? So far, there's nothing. Do you expect that to change?
We hope that the US does that, because Putin will only stop this war when he thinks he can't win. And for him to come to that conclusion, there needs to be more pressure on the Russian economy and more help for the Ukrainians. The American side, I think, is planning to buy some Ukrainian drones. I think it's testimony to Ukraine's achievement during this war. This war will likely end the way World War I ended. One side or the other will run out of resources to carry on.
So you are looking at this war and you think that Ukraine can hold out, that Russia is weaker than perhaps many of us have thought. And so the tide is turning in Ukraine's favor?
Putin started this war on hyper-optimistic assumptions. He thought that he was going to have a coup in Kiev, that it would take 3 days, that Ukrainians will welcome him with open arms because they are just misguided Russians. All of those assumptions proved to be incorrect, and he's mired in a war which is destroying Russia's future, which has already cost 1 million dead and wounded. And the trouble is that he can't admit the mistake to himself or to the Russian people. You know, these colonial wars usually take about a decade. They only end when the aggressor concludes that he can't win. And usually they are ended by a different team than started it.
Wow, well, that means you're talking about many more years, possibly. I mean, depending on whether you started in 2014 or 2022, and you're talking about possible regime change in Russia.
Well, if you look at Russia's history, Russia lost plenty of wars. The Crimean War, the Russo-Japanese War, got knocked out of World War I, lost the invasion of Poland 1920, lost the invasion of Afghanistan, and lost the Cold War. And they all have one thing in common. Only after the war have there been reforms in Russia. And in fact, reforms only happen after a lost war. So actually, to lose this war for Russia, it would not only be good for Ukraine and for Europe, but also for Russia.
And in almost all those cases, there was regime change in Russia.
After Russo-Japanese War, which was brought to an end actually by the President of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, with the Treaty of Portsmouth, Nicholas II bought himself 12 years.
Radek Sikorski, always a pleasure.
Thank you.